What's up, fellas? Come on in. This is my basement. You probably heard me talk on a podcast, skullcap a lot of bulls, and this is just kind of the overflow for some reason. This is where they end up, which is, we're not big ping pong players, obviously, as you can tell. I've got the rest. This isn't everything. I've got some more in the garage, but this is kind of the pile. Obviously not super organized, but that's okay. We'll dip into my office here in a second too, and I'll show you. I've only ever mounted 4 animals. They're all mule deer. Don't tell Brady that. Yeah, we'll just dive in. We'll pull some of these out. We'll do a little storytelling and just kind of show you guys some heads. This one right here, my only Alaskan moose. Went on a DIY trip with a friend. Went up there and we hunted for 10 days. We killed 2 bulls. Just an awesome trip, like dream come true. When I was a little kid, I was dreaming about going hunting. This was the number one on my bucket list. Maybe a little fun fact about this. So people ask like what that thing weighs. So skullcap, obviously skullcapped. Skullcap and the skull plate. So weight on those, 68 pounds. And this bull is about 62 inches wide. Big giant paddles. 13 total trips to pack this bull out. So 7 for me, 6 for my buddy Steve, who was nice enough to help me out. But a lot of meat, a lot of antler, and really just good memories. We'll jump over here. We'll grab some elk heads and pull those out. This bull right here, we'll pull it out first. A little 7x7. Also got a cool little devil tine right there that he chipped and broke off. This is a New Mexico bull. I can't remember the year that I killed this bull, but it was the first year I'd drawn a tag in New Mexico for elk. Drew it by myself. I went down there on a 10-day backpack trip. I killed this bull and had to get a packer to help me out. I think I was about 13 miles in. Little fun fact maybe about this bull. It's probably one of the only times I've ever cried in the woods. Very few, but this took just about everything I had to kill this bull. And when I got him killed, I was just like overblown with emotion. But good memory, cool bull, nice frame. We'll just make a stack over here, should we? Let's see, what else? Utah. Oh, no, we'll pull this off top. So this little guy, just a general season Wyoming bull. If you guys watched the film that I did with Chris Neville called Out West, this is that bull that I shot off a Wallow. It came in and thumped him at 30 yards. I think 2 nights later, Neville shot a bull off the same Wallow. Nice 6-point, and that was his first bull elk. So good memory just associated with that. One of the reasons I like skullcapping bulls is because I can do things like this. I can pull them off of a pile. I can handle them. So this is my best bull with a bow. This was a Utah bull. Drew on a limited entry tag. If you guys watched that film that we did, it would have been 2 years ago. Dog days. Yeah, hot, man. Hot. I think it was 90s almost every day. And ended up shooting this bull. And he's my best bull. I think he's right about 354, 352, something like that. Long beams. I think he's got like 56-inch beams. He's just heavy. Interesting fact about this bull, he aged him out 7.5, which is pretty cool. Sent the teeth in, got him aged out. He's kind of like right in his prime. Hard to say if he'd ever been any bigger. This bull right here. So I killed this bull not this year, but last year, just on an OTC Elk tag in Colorado. I started in on this hunt with Chris Neville and his brother Josh. We went together for a couple days, I guess, and then ended up splitting off. Spot and stock on this bull. This bull had 6 cows, and they bedded in this little pocket, and just made a stock on him. I was able to walk in on him. It took me, I want to say, about 3 hours to actually close the distance to about 60 yards. And he got up to come check a cow, walked in right underneath me, and ended up shooting him. And this bull took me 3 days to pack out. Arizona late archery bull. Shot this with my dad with me. He wasn't actually with me, but he was up on the glass and knob. Cool story about this. This is a November archery tag. So spot and stock in Arizona. My birthday was in November that year, and I got to sit there with my dad. My dad got to tell me like a full breakdown of the story when I was born and kind of the night and the emotions and what was going through his head. And then I killed this bull, I want to say 2-3 days later. Shot this bull a little bit back. I only got one lung and ended up having to watch him for probably 2-3 hours and put himself in a spot that I could get in another stock and get in another arrow in him, and he ended up dying right in the bottom of this canyon. This bull right here is a Wyoming bull. I killed this with my brother. My brother went in with me. We packed in a bunch of miles, probably 11 miles, I want to say. And I had this big hunt planned. I had 10 days worth of food. I was going to go in there and just really hunt hard for 10 days. And I think I saw this bull the second morning that we were in there. And I thought, yeah, that's a bull I'd be really happy with. And so I was able to make a loop on him and his cows. They bedded in this little timber pocket. He snuck out the bottom and shot him at 55 yards. The thing I like about him is I really like that back end. I like that big fifth. Just a cool Wyoming bull. This bull's a buck, yeah, just a little Colorado buck I shot. I was waiting on a really big buck to come out of a fill onto public land, and he never came out. He followed, is it like a 210 buck, giant buck. Anyway, one morning he followed a bunch of does, and I thought the buck was going to come up right underneath me on the public, and he stopped probably 15 yards shy of moving on to public land, just let those does go. And then this buck came out a little while later, and I was like, you're getting it, because I think maybe I was just frustrated with that big buck. But anyway, cute little 4-point. This bull right here. This bull here is the first branch antlered bull I ever killed with a bow. It's a Utah bull. This bull's like right at 330. This is kind of like what got me into bow hunting. Like, this exact situation. Hunted with my dad, and we ended up watching this bull. He was with another bull, and maybe 10 or 15 calves. They worked up onto this bench, and I ended up making a big loop to try to get out ahead of him. And I was just creeping through like a bunch of aspen regeneration, just dog hair thick. I was creeping along, and I broke out into this little edge of a meadow, and this bull was feeding just on the other side of that meadow. And I got down on my knees. There was a little ground juniper, and my dad was there off my shoulder. And we watched him, and he kind of worked his way out into the meadow. Ended up ranging him. He was 48 yards, and I remember my dad being off my shoulder, and he put his front leg forward, kind of stepped forward, totally broadside. I remember my dad saying, "There's your shot," and I drew back and shot him, and just absolutely aced him, and he went over and died maybe 60, 70 yards. Yeah, this bull has like a lot of good memories for me, and this is like really what got me into bow hunting. It was the first year I'd actually had a modern compound bow. My parents had gone in and helped me get that for Christmas that year, and this is like really, I think, where my love of archery, my love of elk hunting started. I remember cleaning this elk, like working on this elk, skinning it with my dad, and my dad and I were working pretty close together, and he ran one of those little razor knives across the back of my knuckle on one finger, and I stood up, and as soon as I stood up, I was like, oh, the lights are going out, and it just faded to black, and I passed out. And I woke up with my dad. He grabbed me, and he was just kind of holding me up against a tree, and I don't know how long I'd been out, probably not too long, but he was super freaked out. I was scared, and kind of after I came to, I started feeling a little better. I realized that it was probably like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I don't think I had eaten anything but maybe like an English muffin that morning for some reason, and some water. So I was just like completely debilitated. We put on a ton of miles, but just fun little memory. Cool bull, and really one of my favorite memories from hunting. This guy right here. So this is a Wyoming bull. If you guys watched the Brotherhood of the Elkwoods film that we did with Born and Raised, this is the bull that I shot on that hunt with those guys. I was with Steve Howard from Born and Raised, and Wes, who was their camera guy. We trailed this herd all morning long. We were backpacking, just trailed them. We had another bull that came in that ran right past us, and I just couldn't get a shot. It was super thick, and he ended up kind of bumping and ran, and I thought kind of the gig was up for the morning. We just kept following him. We could just keep him bugling enough to keep up with him, and we popped up on the edge of this little lip, and cow called a few times, and this bull turned, left his herd, and came back up the hill to me. It's like I often preach, like I think that mid-morning, like 11 o'clock time frame is a great time to kill a bull, because if you can keep up with those herds long enough and just let them know that you're in the area, eventually when they kind of get close to bedding areas, they will kind of let their cows go because they know their cows are kind of safe for them. They can get back to them because those cows are going to bed, and those bulls will come back and check out a cow that they've been hearing behind them all day. And that's exactly what happened to this bull. He just came back up the hill, and I shot him at 17 yards, I think. One thing I remember about this bull is he came up the hill, he was just glunking the whole way, just that glunk, glunk, glunk. I remember hearing that and just my heart just pounding through my chest. And yeah, came up, put a good shot on him, and he ended up going down the hill and died. This bull died on one of the steepest hillsides I think I've ever killed an elk on. Like, it was so steep, but wide. This bull's pretty wide. It's got some width to him. Pretty cool. Just general season Wyoming bull. Bottom bull, bottom bull. Bottom, this is a Utah bull. So I've drawn now, in my lifetime, 3 different elk tags in the state of Utah. This is the second tag I ever drew. I'd hunted with my brother the first few days, and I'd scouted all summer long, and I found a bull that I thought was pushing 380. He was a 7x6. He had split whale tail on the one side that actually split like a whale's tail, just, you know, horizontally. And I had that bull at 89 yards, I think, opening day, and just didn't feel right. It didn't work out. I let a 360 bull walk between he and I at 45 yards. And I was like, no, I'm not going to shoot that bull because that 380 bull's down there. And that was opening day of the hunt, and that was the last day I ever saw that bull. Like, he just flat disappeared. And so I ended up hunting, I want to say probably another 10 days, 12 days maybe on my own. My brother was kind of in and out here and there when he could, but I ended up shooting this bull one evening off a wallow. He came into a wallow one night and stuck his nose out from the aspen, and he kind of checked things out, and then he turned and he went back in the aspen and he disappeared. I was like, dang it, you know, but I was backpacking and I knew that was a good spot, so I went back in there. I set the same wallow the next night. Same bull came in, and this time he kind of did the same thing, stuck his nose out in the trees, kind of checked things out, and then he just came right out in this little meadow and flopped down the wallow, and I shot him at 43 yards, and he went over and died kind of on this little hill. And my brother and his kids, and then one of my neighbors actually came up and helped me pack this bull out, so we got him out all in one trip, which is not usually the case for me, but pretty cool. So that's a Utah bull, third bull. This bull I want to say is just over 330, like maybe a smidge, like 331. But that's kind of the elk pile. Like I said, I got a few more up in the garage, but we won't get into those. Oh, keep in mind, this bull right here, I just talked to you about. I shot him, like I said, in a wallow on a unit here in Utah. So keep that in mind. I shot that bull in a wallow, and I'm going to show you a buck here that I shot in the exact same meadow about 3 feet from where I killed that bull, which is another kind of cool story. Well, I'll walk in my office. This is my little home away from the office, I guess. Like I said, I've only ever mounted 4 mule deer, and I'll show you those first. We look at the one in the corner. So this buck here in the corner, this is a buck that I killed on opening day of the muzzleloader. I shot this buck in the same wallow, so off that exact same little wet meadow that I just showed you with that bull. This buck is 39 wide to the cheaters. He's just under 205, so he's like 204 and some change. I had a buddy kind of tip me off onto this buck. One of my favorite things about this buck is those floating main beams. I remember seeing this buck, and then, you know, got some trail camera photos of him in the summer, and I remember telling my wife, I'm moving out for as long as it takes to get this buck killed. So I had a dedicated hunter tag that year. It's just a general season unit. I hunted this buck on the archery hunt. Only saw this buck, I think, opening day. And a fun fact is I actually saw this buck with a bigger buck. So there's 2 bucks, him and another buck. This buck, like I said, he's just shy of 205. The other buck I thought was about 215. And I never ended up seeing that buck ever again. But hunted this buck the whole bow hunt. There were a lot of stretches on that hunt where it was just pouring rain day in, day out. I remember one stretch, it just rained for 5 days when I was up in there, and the only animals I had seen was a 2-point and a doe. And it was rough. I didn't know that I'd ever find him. And then opening day of the muzzleloader hunt, it was real windy. I dropped down in the bottom of the canyon, kind of get out of the wind, and I remember looking up the draw, and he came feeding out with a 3-point and a doe. And as soon as I saw him, I just threw everything in my pack. I took off, made the trip up, popped up over this little lip, and as I did that, the doe was going through the meadow, and the other 2 bucks, I could kind of see them out ahead of me moving into the timber, and I thought, I'm behind them, I'm too late, there's no chance. And I was trying to figure out what to do, seeing if I could maybe make a loop on them, and all of a sudden I saw the doe kind of turn, and she came back into the meadow, and I just watched her, and here come the 3-point. And then this buck, dead last, came right back through that little meadow. And I don't know what turned them. I don't know why they did, but they turned and came right back down through it. And I shot him at 80 yards with the muzzleloader. Probably one of my very favorite bucks for sure. This buck I killed last year on the archery hunt. And one of my very favorite things about this buck is just how massive he is. You can see the mass measurements above the split are bigger than my reach. I can't remember exactly. I want to say he's got like 55 inches of mass, maybe. I don't know, he's just really heavy, but shot him with my bow. I think I told the story on the podcast with Lorenzo and I, but yeah, I ended up putting this buck to bed one morning. I'd seen him the night before. He was with a small buck. The next morning, he was all by himself, which is the best case scenario, but he ended up working his way up into some ledges. And I watched him bed. He bedded under this big, lone, dead Doug fir. And I watched him for probably an hour just to make sure he was going to be there. And like a lot of bucks do, he got up and he fed for about 45 minutes. And then he went back and he rebedded even tighter up against the cliff. And at that point, I figured it's like 11:15 in the morning. He's going to be bedded for probably the next 4 or 5 hours. So I ran at this buck. Like I literally ran. Cut the distance. I went around the back side of the hill because I had to climb clear to the top of the peak. I didn't know if I'd be able to pick my way down through the ledges, but as luck would have it, I was able to kind of pick my way down through there. Really sketchy. Probably made some decisions I probably shouldn't have made. Maybe put my safety a little bit at risk, kind of working down through there. But I was able to get like right above him, and there was about a 3-foot ledge. And I remember I leaned over, and he was bedded right below me, right below this big tree, and he was laying facing to the left. And I just remember this side, I could see that side just like sticking out. And I remember just boom, boom. My heart was just like going out my chest. And I thought, man, this is really going to happen. Ranged him. He was 27 yards for the shot, 39 yards, I want to say, straight line. So that's how steep that angle was. And I just waited for him. I thought best chance was to wait for him to stand up. With such a steep angle, I didn't want to risk like hitting him, in the spine or something. I figured if he stood up, he'd like give me, maybe another 5 or 6 inches of an angle where I could actually put that down through into his vitals. And he stood up and he kind of turned in his bed. And then I don't know if you guys have ever seen, but like a buck will, lift his hind leg, he'll like reach back and give himself a scratch. And he was just like lean back, giving himself a scratch, and drew my bow level with the horizon, just like leaned over and watched my bubble and shot him. And it went right down through just this side of his back strap, came out the other side in the armpit, and went down the hill kind of around the end of this little ledge and died. He probably went 100 yards and tipped over. But this is, there's probably only ever been, I'd say 2 bucks, just these 2 that I've ever killed that I knew they were big, but walking up onto these 2 bucks and like see him laying there dead and just like looking at the antlers, I was just blown away with just how big they were. Like they grew, which is such a cool feeling. I hope you guys get that feeling sometime. This buck, so this is, I won't go too deep. This is like the first pretty decent buck I killed, which is why I mounted him. He's a 182 inches. I shot him with a rifle. I hunted him really hard. Again, dedicated hunter. Hunted him with a bow. He was actually with a couple other bucks that were pretty good. I killed another one I'll show you here in a sec. The next year. Interesting story about this buck and then this other buck. I was working, I was doing biological clearances for like oil and gas companies for exploration. I get up every morning, and I was doing this survey for this company that was doing some seismic exploration in southern Utah. And I was driving to work. I was driving down the freeway, and I looked over to my right, and I saw a deer. It was like July, and pulled over and looked, and it was a group of bucks. And this was one of the bucks, and then one of the other ones I'll show you here in a sec. But they were right off the freeway, and I kept going back every morning. I would watch these bucks, and they were down way low, and they were actually crossing the freeway to get water on one side, and then going back up on the other side to bed. A lot of the times when I was hunting this buck, I would sit in the dark on the freeway, and I would listen for the jake brakes of these trucks as they were going down the hill. And that's pretty much when I knew that these deer were crossing, because you hear some truck just lay on its horn and just lock them up. And I would kind of know, okay, yeah, they're moved back. They're on the other side, which would help eliminate my search area. So, yeah, shot this buck with a rifle. Good memory. My wife and my kid, my oldest boy, I think he was like 3 at the time, and he came up and helped me clean him and pack him out, which is pretty cool. This buck is a muzzleloader buck. I shot him opening day of the muzzleloader hunt. If you guys remember the Halloween story that I told you on the podcast with the gal in the middle of the road with the long hair, the girl from the ring, I killed this buck that night. So little you put the puzzle pieces together. This buck I always called Captain Hook, obviously because he's got this split main beam that just splits to the bottom end. I hunted this buck during the bow hunt, no luck. I went back opening day of the muzzleloader hunt. I hunted that morning after I'd ran into that girl from the ring, and made a big loop through a bunch of country. Hadn't seen any of the bucks, and then I was actually looping back towards my four-wheeler that night, and I was probably only like 300-400 yards from my four-wheeler. I came up over a little rise with some aspen, old growth aspen, and there's a notch in this aspen tree, tall one, and another one kind of coming out. This buck was standing almost exactly like that, just like looking at me through this notch in the aspen. And so ended up just shooting him. I think I shot him at 65 yards, and he ended up tipping over and drug him down the hill. This is probably one of the last bucks I can remember I gutted. I didn't have to quarter him. Actually, he's close enough to the road that I was able to just gut him and throw him on the four-wheeler and got him out. But matching cheaters are super cool. He's just so unique. I think I'm trying to remember, 191 maybe? Somewhere in that neighborhood. But one of my favorite bucks for sure. He's just a character buck. I love these matching cheaters. And then my buddy, shout out to Josh Pollock, mounted this buck, and I think he did a killer job. So this buck here, so I told you guys a story about the freeway buck that I killed with a rifle. This buck was the buck that was running with that buck. And I went back the very next year and hunted with my muzzleloader and ended up having him walk in underneath me. Glassed him up. He was with a group of other bucks. Ended up shooting him at about 80-90 yards. But he's kind of willow horns, not super heavy, but his backs are big. Just a cool buck. And a couple others. Let's see. This buck's just a buck. Thing I like about this buck I remember is he's got these spooned out main beams. They're almost flat, like dished out like a spoon, which is kind of cool. But shot him with a rifle, opening day of the rifle hunt, Utah general season. This buck right here, shot him with a muzzleloader. I can't remember what day of the hunt it was, but he's got these tripods, which I think are super cool. I actually saw this buck the year before I killed him, and all 3 of these tripods were a lot bigger. They were pretty much even with the tops of these tines. This one here was probably that big. I don't know why he regressed. He's just kind of a compact. It's what I call a little big buck. I ended up shooting him with Muzzy, and this is, I remember, terrible pack out. Awful pack out with this buck. Heavy. This buck right here, this is the old gimme. Scouted this buck all summer long. Couldn't find him. Had a bad situation opening morning on the muzzleloader hunt on another bigger buck. A guy took a shot at a buck I was working in on. I was probably 110 yards from. He took a shot at probably 320 with the muzzleloader and missed that buck and kind of blew him out of the country. So mid-afternoon, I thought, I'm just going to run over and look at another area and see if I can find this buck. And I was driving down the road through a big open sagebrush flat. There's some pinyon juniper pockets. He came around into this little pocket of juniper, and he was bedded on the side of the road. he jumped up. He was with another buck, and they ran across the road. And my muzzleloader was in the front, like, passenger seat. And I remember in trying to get my muzzleloader, I honked the horn with my elbow. It was just a complete cluster. Anyway, grabbed my muzzleloader, jumped out the truck, and got loaded, took off running. And I really just was hoping to see this buck because he went through the other side of the trees. And I was just jogging along the edge of this pinyon juniper cut and come around this big bushy juniper. And he was just standing there looking at me. It was like, I think he thought that if he would just let me drive by. And anyway, he was standing there 18 yards. So I shot him, just dumped him, and he tipped over dead right there. But when he died, I could still hear my truck running, and I could hear the radio playing in my truck, which was probably 100 yards maybe from me. But I guess I have a knack for some road hunting bucks. But yeah, cool buck. He's a 180 buck. He's like 181. This is my one and only whitetail. So I shot this in Wisconsin. Those guys at Matthews were nice enough to invite me out there. I did a little hunt. This buck came through. This is I think the only buck I saw in 5 days of sitting from dark to dark, but obviously not a giant. So I definitely got room to improve on my whitetail collection. My only lion, you guys have probably heard me talk about on the podcast. It's the only lion I ever killed. I went with Clint Meekum, my buddy. If you guys are looking for a lion hunt, get a hold of Meekum Outfitters. McLean and Hunter, just killer, awesome. Just some of the best dudes I know. Ran that lion all day on mules. I can't remember how many dogs we had, maybe 5 or 6, but he ended up going into a big, leaned over, dead Doug fir and climbed all the way up in it. And I think when we got there, I want to say like 4 of the 6 dogs were probably 40 feet in a tree with the lion, and it got real hectic. Ended up shooting him with my bow, and he ran down the tree. We had one of the dogs that fell out of the tree, and I ended up packing that one out in my backpack, and it was a fiasco, but probably one of the most interesting days I ever spent in the woods. So a couple of Sitka Blacktail. This is my best Sitka Blacktail bucks. I went up there to Kodiak Island and hunted a couple of times, and that's my best buck. I would highly encourage you guys, if you've never done that, that's an adventure of a lifetime. I think the first time I was up there, I saw 13 different brown bears, tons of deer, and it's one of the only places I've ever been hunting where you get out there and you're like, I am alone. It feels like you are on another planet. It's incredible country and way more physically challenging than I ever would have thought. A couple of antelope in the corner, 2 best antelope. This one right here is a Wyoming buck I shot. I think he's right around 80 when he dried, 80 inches, I want to say. I think he greened out like 81 and a half. This buck right here is a Utah buck that I killed. And when I killed him, I thought, man, that's a pretty good buck. So that's the only animal I've ever actually had officially scored. So any buck, any elk I've ever showed you, like, I've never taken anything to an official score. It's not that I have anything against it. Just really hasn't been my jam. I just didn't care that much, but I did have that antelope scored because I thought, man, he looks pretty big. That year he was, I think, the biggest antelope taken in the state of Utah with a bow. And I think, I would have to look right now, but I think for a long time he was like number 6 all time in the state of Utah with a bow. So I think he greened out at 84. When I actually had him officially scored, I didn't know anything about taking care of antelope, so I boiled the skull off, boiled the sheaths. I mean, I did everything that you could possibly do to decrease the score on this buck, but I greened him. I think he was 84, and I think he ended up being like 81 and a half maybe. But anyway, that's my best antelope buck. That's kind of it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the old shop tour, the office tour. If you got questions, drop them. Love to hear you guys' comments or feedback. Let me know, but thanks for popping over. Appreciate it.